Welcome to the Journey Principles, where we show you how to go from stuck to unstoppable with life strategies that work. Now, here's your host and creator of the Transform You framework, Stephen Scoggins.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Journey Principles. Sitting here today with Connor Kraft, Director of Connections, as always. Coming to you not live, but recorded from the Journey Principles Institute here in Raleigh, North Carolina, otherwise known as the City of Oaks. You may be noticing I'm wearing my New York sweatshirt. Part of the reason I'm doing that today is just to represent one small sliver of one of the states that's majorly affected by the coronavirus. We've been very fortunate in North Carolina to date that we haven't had quite the outbreak some of the other places have. If you would like me to wear one of your sweaters on air to represent your state, feel free to mail us one. You can go to journeyprinciples.com, look down at the footer, and find our office address there. I'd be happy to do that to represent your state and hopefully kind of give back to that. In the meantime,
he's a schmedium, by the way.
I'm a schmedium, yes. I'm 5 foot nothing, but a little bulkier than somebody that's probably my height otherwise. But I appreciate you guys. We appreciate what you guys have been going through, and hope you guys are enjoying some of this content while you are staying at home if you're watching this in 2020. And if not, we're going to go ahead and jump into the content for the day. Connor, what's our content, Holmes?
So today we're going to talk about influences.
Oh,
one
of my favorites.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, influences, when you shot the whiteboard lesson, which will actually go live tomorrow,
awesome.
Of this lesson, I was blown away by just the amount of content and value packed into it. Yeah. And I had underestimated how powerful influences are until I really saw that. So I'm really excited to go deeper into that today.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. It's one of the subjects I'm most passionate about because it's one of the things that I had to really reach for in my own personal transformation. It's one of the things that I had to keep going back to. In fact, some of you guys have seen right over Connor's left shoulder is several copies of my first book, The Journey Principles, 10 Simple Principles for a Life Journey That Matters. And that's cute. In fact, if you ask a question on air, I'll autograph one and send you one on for free.
Hey, that's a good gift.
We'll do that for sure.
Yeah.
The book did very well. Obviously, moved several thousand copies. And
you want a free book? Send a question about life mastery to questions@journeyprinciples.com. And if we end up using your question in any of our content, and
I'll personally autograph it. We'll even videotape.
Yeah, if we got the question from you, if we've already answered it, then not so much. But yeah.
So what do you say? A gift for some, not for
well,
others?
No. What I'm saying is that some people are going to write in questions that we already answered 3 weeks ago, but they didn't do their homework, so they don't know that.
Ah, okay. So
you can't give everyone credit.
Are you saying go back and watch all the content?
No, I'm just saying just make sure your question is unique.
He's saying pay attention is what he's saying, or pay attention as I like to say. No, but seriously, what most people don't understand is that book actually came out of my morning routine, where I decided to began to ask myself why my life at that time was my life at that time. One of the first questions I ever asked myself was, I'm so used to telling Steve stories that I forgot to ask my own. What does it take to change the essence of a man? Was a deep question that I asked myself. And I pulled my iPhone out at the time, and I began typing. And I ended up being on the treadmill for almost 2 hours. And here's what you guys don't know. I have wonderful editors. Like, I have fantastic editors. And thank God for them, because that 2-hour conversation that I had with myself in the iPhone was one giant run-on sentence. Not a single comma, not a single capitalized letter, and not a single period. Okay? But it just goes to show sometimes you have to do a mental, if you will, or verbal vomit. And I wish it was a better word to use, but that's essentially what happened. And one of the things I uncovered in doing so, I had about a 4-week time span where I would ask myself every morning one question, and that became the Journey Principles book. Now, fortunately, the Journey Principles book has been edited. So you don't have to worry about a giant run-on sentence where I talk about 10 very specific principles, 10 very specific adversities that I personally faced. And one commonality that you'll see through about 6 of the chapters is influences.
Wow.
Right? There are.
I didn't even think about that when I was reading it and then listening to the audiobook, which I did 2 times. I obviously wasn't thinking about how that ties into some of the things you teach, but it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, and it's how I got from the homelessness all the way to where I was at then for sure, and at today. I'm still living by the same principles that I've been teaching. I've just added a bunch more to them, right? So I'm trying to kind of dissect and give you the top 7 principles for each of your 8 pillars. I'm in the process of working on that now as we speak. But understanding influence is pivotal. Not just good information, but pivotal in understanding who you are at your core, how you can improve upon that, and how you're going to move forward.
So what is an influence? Let's define that.
Yeah, so an influence, there's several I'm going to go over. So I think there's 5 different influences.
5 different types.
5 different types of influences that pretty much make or break your self-esteem and self-worth. Okay? Now, an influence itself is something that inspires, encourages, or changes a behavior pattern.
Inside of you.
Okay. So what I mean by that is there are good influences, there are mediocre influences, and there are just straight up bad influences.
Right. Okay. So I guess bad influences would set you down a bad path in life.
Exactly.
Good influences are more likely to put you back on the straight and narrow,
right,
I guess.
Exactly. And they say, there's a saying that says every acorn is an oak tree, or can be an oak tree. Okay, meaning an acorn's a seed. An oak tree at fully matured stage has a massive trunk, deep roots, very, very strong resistance against storms.
Yeah, every oak tree was once an acorn.
Okay, exactly. Now, if you think about this, there have been oak trees that have fallen in the forest because of rot and decay. Okay, it's because the nourishment to the root itself was toxic.
Right. The root is like one of the most powerful parts of a tree.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So your personality, your person, yourself, okay, are just like that oak tree. You have a definitive start and a potential outcome.
I see.
End.
So like a oak tree has a life cycle.
Exactly.
And it starts out as just an acorn, and then it builds roots, and then it sprouts.
Exactly.
And, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know all the terminology here, but it grows leaves and branches and all that until it's a big oak tree.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So if you think about yourself kind of in using oak tree philosophy, okay, now I'm being a little figurative today, so thank you, Connor, for giving me some runway here. The very first influence that you've got to address and look at is what I like to call the parental influence. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a parent, meaning a mother or father. A parental influence is the person or people that played the role of your parents.
In your upbringing, or does it matter in your whole life?
In your upbringing. Get to this, we're talking getting started. We're talking taking that acorn and turning it into a root system.
So when you say acorn, are you saying that the first influence type is the equivalent to the acorn in the story?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so if you look at your life like you are the oak tree, and you start, and the bottom of the tree is the acorn, which is basically before there was anything, this is the first influence, which is parental.
Yep.
Got it. Okay,
exactly.
That makes sense.
So your parental influences have a very, very, very huge impact, okay, in your starting point, right? The better the influence, the better the start. The more difficult the influence, the more difficult to start.
So if you have really, really crappy parents who treat you like crap all the time, who make you feel like you're nothing, you're a lot less likely, unfortunately, to achieve
there's
success.
more adversity in your way.
Okay, yeah,
to have a healthy life and to break that kind of
whereas if you had fantastic
thing.
parents, you're setting yourself up. Well, you're not setting yourself up.
You typically have a much stronger starting point in the methods of self-esteem. Specifically.
Got it.
Okay.
But you're not, but even if you had a terrible parental upbringing, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily like screwed, right?
Right, exactly. No, you're not screwed at all.
There's a lot of people who have...
I had a very rocky or roller coaster-ish upbringing myself. A lot of inconsistencies, okay? Different people raising me at different times, under different circumstances, under different situations, under different methodologies or modalities of their own emotional and spiritual and physical health.
So even if you have some not so great influences in these areas, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to be able to overcome that.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I'm encouraging you to the opposite. So because a lot of people think that their past, especially when generated by a difficult upbringing, okay,
well, it's one of the most common
are completely derailed
excuses that people make for why they can't be successful is where they came from.
Yeah, a lot of times I'll share the story of two sons on stage, but essentially the nutshell of that, no pun intended with the oak tree there. The two sons is they both had the same upbringing,
right?
The same influences, right? The same stuff. One ended up an alcoholic and one ended up a multimillionaire living in New York.
Oh, that's right. I love that story.
Okay. That just goes to show.
That'd be a cool piece of content, by the way.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. What it just goes to show is you are not destined to become a failure because of your start. Okay? Your start has nothing to do with your end. Okay? Now, you may have a more difficult road at overcoming certain things, but we're more than happy to make that road easier for you. Okay? Now, parental influences structure a few things inside of our DNA. Beliefs, values, forces of habits, how we feel about our internal significance, and the overall meaning that we place on all emotional or situational events in the future. Okay? So that's influence number one. Now, when I share that with you, what are your first thoughts?
Regarding parental?
Yeah.
Well, I like how you tied the beliefs, the forces of habit, the significance, the meaning. I like how you tied specific kind of areas of your life or of basically the makeup of who you are.
Yeah.
You tied that into where it comes from and listed it as parental influences. One of the things I like about this lesson, which I'm sure you'll continue with this trend, is each one of these influences kind of operates on a core part of you.
Yeah.
So your parental influences are play a big part in your belief systems initially, your initial forces of habit, your initial significance and sense of meaning. But some of the later influences have to do with other areas,
Different
like
areas,
your choices that you make and things like that.
So influence number two is what's known as environmental. Okay, now environmental can mean a few different things. Geographic location, and whether or not it's so when I say geographic location, I mean anywhere in the world or the country. Place of birth, place you were a toddler or a young adult.
Could be like if you grew up in the city versus the suburb.
Exactly. City, suburbs, trailer park, ghetto, like that is an influence based on environment. In other words, certain types of talk, speech, and other things happen inside of those environments. So your environmental influences specifically address how you speak, your continued values development, which is worldview.
So like accents, things like that. It actually kind of makes sense to me how values would be kind of somewhat inherent there, because there's cultural values. Like if you go to Japan, there's typically a much greater sense of honor and loyalty and discipline is huge for a lot of Japanese culture. And so I would imagine that even if you are not Japanese genetically, if you were raised in Japan, that you would adopt some of those values.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. I just wanted to.
Yeah, so that's part of it. And then the other thing is tendencies.
Yes.
So tendencies, conflict resolution, stuff like that. So growing up in and out of trailer parks, okay, or in and out of seeing wet trailer stuff. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. Absolutely nothing wrong. That was my starting point. Nothing wrong with that. But there are culturistic things that you mentioned of belief systems, for example, right? When I went out to go step out on faith to begin to create a business and create a better me, I got a lot of blowback from people who didn't want the same things or who didn't think it was possible.
In the trailer park?
In the trailer park areas, okay? Now, that could easily translate to the ghetto. It could easily translate to a shelter, right? It could easily translate...
Any impoverished upbringing.
like anything like that, okay? Sometimes the most affluent environments also create a different skill set or different adversity, because some people are so used to having their needs supplied in abundance that they now become entitled. So each of these different environments have a plus, a minus, and something you can learn and grow from it. So one of the things as I go through all of these different 5 influences that I want everybody to memorize or think about is that each one of them can teach you something that you can use for your future, and each one of them can teach you something that you need to remove from your present. Does that make sense? All right, so step 1, meaning influence number 1, parental influences, beliefs, values, significance, and meaning. Environmental influences, everything from speech, continued development of values, culturistic values, tendencies, and responses. So that conflict resolution and how you interact with other people.
Right. So far we have who are your parental influences, either your biological parents or your parental figure, and then the environment that you were raised in.
Yeah.
So the city you were in, the actual environment itself, were you upper middle class? Were you lower class? Were you born wealthy into a wealthy family? Those things all play a part as well.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing that, like, if you think about it on the environmental side as well, typically people that grow up in a small town have the open door policy, help your neighbor kind of thing. If you grew up in the inner city, a lot of times it's protect your own. Okay, so that's another piece or pivot on what an environmental influence could look like.
Right. So okay, I like that. That makes sense.
All right, number 3. So we went from the seed, meaning the acorn, to a developing root. As we continue up the tree trunk, right, we're starting to develop thicker roots.
Right, and if you want to visually understand this, go check
sure.
out the whiteboard lesson, because we're going to, tomorrow, just check that out, because we'll actually visualize the oak tree, and it'll make more sense.
Totally. The third one is relational influences.
Okay,
so these are people, everybody typically has a childhood friend they grew up with or someone that they kind of connected with or something like that. So these are people who aren't part of your family, but you came into contact with that added or illustrated a relational value.
Okay, so these are like childhood friends and peers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's where the analogy or the topic comes from that show me your 5 friends, I'll show you your future.
Okay, for sure. Well, then it doesn't just necessarily have to be in your upbringing then. Only really the first 2 are, right?
Yeah, exactly. The first 2 have more to do with your upbringing. That's your foundational level of your worldview.
So once you get outside of, your parental upbringing and your environment that you were raised in, then there's relationships, and those pretty much your span
now
your
you're
entire
getting
life.
outside of your upbringing, your house, your family. Now you're getting friendships, conflict resolution. Were you a bully? Were you bullied?
So whether you're 40 years old today and you have your 5 closest friends, this still applies.
Absolutely.
To your current
absolutely.
friends. Okay, absolutely.
Absolutely. It's another reason why it's possible to work through or have like a situation, like for example, the worst person you can get relationship advice from, if you're in a marriage or married, the worst person you get relationship advice from is someone who's been divorced 5 times.
Probably, yeah.
Okay, that's an example of how a relational connection can potentially harm you.
Oh, so let's say that you're friends with Bob, who's been married 5 times and been divorced 5 times.
Yeah.
And you're looking to get, married to this spicy señorita.
Well, maybe you're either married or maybe you're looking to get married. Because Bob's gonna be like, dude, never get married.
Exactly. So you are, looking to tie the knot with this spicy señorita.
Oh my gosh.
And I've heard other influencers like literally call it that, so I don't know why. But yeah, so you have this or your man's, whoever. I don't care who you are. But then Bob says, "Oh, dude, marriage that never works, dude.
Yeah.
You can never find a girl who isn't crazy or something like that." And they say that, and then they influence you. How?
Not realizing Bob's probably a big part of the problem.
Oh well, I would think he is if he's been married 5 times.
But this is why the relational influence is so important, because it tends to monkey with or adjust your purpose, your potential, your possibilities, your professional career, how you view relationships, how you view other people, how you view worldview. It's kind of like when people watch only one news source.
Okay, yeah. So
right?
They just watch CNN or just watch Fox or just watch any of those.
You know what I'm saying? It's an influence that influences your thought process and behaviors. Okay. So that's more of the tree trunk, right? As we go up the tree trunk, you're going to start to have the level 4 influence, which is historically your situational influences. These are things that only happen in situation form. This is you getting hired for a job, fired for a job, you having a car accident and dealing with it well, or having a car accident and dealing with it like a jerk, right? A situation occurs, right, that influences your behavior in that moment, okay? And that becomes part of, it can derail you in future growth, depending on how strong that situation was, right? An example could be someone who gets divorced a lot of times. Typically, divorced people, after they're divorced or during a divorce or separation, go through massive identity crises, okay?
And that's situational?
And it's completely situational.
Okay.
The situation is they got divorced.
I see. So let's say that you're going through a situation right now where your father just died.
That's a situation.
That's a situational influence that's going to impact your choices, your emotional states, your clarity of focus, etc.
Exactly.
Got it.
So, and that's what we're trying to get. We're trying to help you understand all the capacities or all the different levels of influences so you can pick the ones that are best suited for you. Okay? So again, situational influences, divorce, getting hired, getting fired, getting married. You mentioned the death of a loved one. All of those are situational influences.
It could be positive too, right?
Could totally
be
positive.
The birth of a child.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right? But they all mean something different.
So all of these things up until this point, 1 through 4, parental influences, your environment that you were raised in, your relationships, both past and present. Present is more important, but past too. And then the situations that you're in, that would probably be contextual to the present moment, right?
Yeah.
So the situation you're in, all of these influences are actually making up how you act and respond today, right now.
Exactly.
To your
so if you are
circumstances.
typically a more negative prone thinker, or someone who thinks poverty is part of lifestyle permanently, or someone who thinks that relationships always fail, your mind has given you evidence to back it up based on one of these other influences.
Wow. So are you saying that limiting beliefs, or maybe not limiting beliefs, but your belief systems in general are forged from your influences?
Exactly.
Wow, that's really powerful.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
One of the questions we get, and one of the questions you've hit me up for is, how do you solve limiting beliefs? Well, you solve limiting beliefs by understanding where the influences came from, and you do like the garden technique, which is what I told you before. You take a negative influence, aka a weed, and you rip that joker out of the garden so your garden can grow.
Yeah, and then I guess it's just you staring at yourself in the front of the mirror, and you can say, do I believe this or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, so the next one's a big one.
Right.
The next one has more to do with your present day.
Okay.
Okay. Now, it could have shaped your worldview in years leading up to this, but the next one is can be the most dangerous. Okay, because it's the most subtle. It's something you don't normally see coming because you're not paying attention to it. For example, back in the early 30s or 40s, a woman's wearing a bikini swimsuit would have been seen as incredibly risque.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Meanwhile,
Oops.
in today's time frame,
What have we done?
ABC, like you take, well, I'm not going to call it any network, but you take any network, and essentially what's on there now is right, wrong, or indifferent. Whether or not you see this as right, wrong, or indifferent, can be incredibly risque at times. So much so that you may feel the need to cover your child's eyes.
I mean, look, you can just look at it like this. There's a very obvious difference between, girls and the way guys dress too. But girls walking down the beach in what is it, G-string, like a thong or something like that, and then basically you can see their whole behind. Versus in the 1950s, that would never have flown.
I actually I watched a young lady on Instagram literally a couple nights ago. I'd say watched, saw a posting. And at like 8 o'clock in the morning, it was a posting, and she was doing the whole duck faces and stuff like that, and kind of doing like the seductive lip pose, like kind of thing, right? And I'm like, poor child. 3 hours later, I see another one where she's kind of got her butt kind of poked out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, poor girl. And the reason I'm feeling that way is because she doesn't know her identity. That's a fishing line.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. So those kinds of things you got to be very careful with, because being a man myself, right? We have to be careful with what we watch, right? If we're gonna screw up, it's typically gonna come through our eyes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what I mean by that is the fifth one is subliminal influences. Okay. And I can give you thousands of examples, right? Watch this. Give me a break. Give me a break. Break me off a piece of that.
Kit Kat bar.
Yep.
Right?
Okay. Subliminal influences have a massive effect on people.
Okay.
Massive effect on people. Music you listen to, movies you watch, TV shows you watch, the social media channels you follow, news channels you follow, right? If you're listening, one of the examples that I've seen kind of be like really prevalent was I was at the gym years ago. I'm kind of a gym rat. I like to work out when the gyms are open, of course. Please open soon.
Oh, yeah. Seriously, I'm trying to start going to the gym, and it's very, very difficult. All the years
I bought
prior,
a Bowflex. Gonna come to the
yeah,
house.
all the years prior, I was praying for an excuse not to go to the gym, and now I'm very frustrated. So please open them back up.
Yeah. So you look at all this and you put it all together. I watched this guy come in. It's a super cool and friendly guy, like totally like living it up and being happy and all this kind of stuff. He proceeds to put on his headphones, and all of a sudden, within about 3 minutes, he's bouncing. His face goes like angry, like red, like beet red, and he's like, he's like looking at everybody. At the gym, looking at everybody like he's angry at everybody. And then he goes to get some water off the water fountain, and he pulls his headphones off, and you can hear the music. And the music's like, exactly. And you're like, this guy was like one of the nicest people you ever met 3, 4, 10 minutes ago, and now he's literally angry and pissed off. Like literally,
just because of listening to that crazy music.
It's because influences matter.
By the way, if you like thrasher music, that's okay. You're not crazy. I'm just kidding.
I'm saying be careful what you let your eyes and your ears see, because that's what you become.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. So if you like thrasher music, just be very careful, because it's probably going to put you in an angry, negative state.
Exactly. And people aren't aware of attitudes and emotional states. They're just not aware. Yeah. It's also precisely like our buddy KC, for example, right? So he gave us different frequency, alpha, beta, and a few other different, right?
For sure.
We went through an entire brainwave frequency education with him. Okay?
Yeah, that was nuts.
Right? And he gave us a couple tracks. He said, look, when you want to concentrate, listen to this. When you want to sleep, listen to this. When you want to stay awake, listen to this. Right? And every single thing that he said was true. Right? Now, that's an influence based on auditory connection. Okay? Your auditory connection and your visual connection are the two greatest gates that you've got to protect.
Your ears and your eyes.
Your ears and your eyes.
So music, what movies are you watching, what TV shows?
So if you want to grow up if you want to be a faithful husband, then don't put your eyes on things that could cause you to dream.
That's good. That's a very good good point.
If you want to be a person of integrity and maturity, then you probably shouldn't be watching a bunch of videos of everybody cussing left and right. Now, you just heard me use a quote-unquote curse word a second ago. Nobody's perfect. What I'm saying is you got to be very, very careful what you put in your eyes and your ears.
I definitely know from experience that when I've spent a lot more time watching certain influencers who cuss a lot, I tend to cuss a lot more. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely, if you are the type of person who wants to be careful about certain behaviors like that, for example, just be careful who you're watching and listening to. And I actually have not figured out a way yet to fix that. Yeah. And besides just not listening to them, which I just don't do because I want to listen to them, not because I like them anyway. But yeah, that's
so. Don't come crying to me if you're still stumbling a year from now.
Yeah, that's fine.
You know, here's so just to kind of touch on that. Their subliminal influences control several things: your overall consistent emotional state, not your foundational emotional state, but your consistency of emotional state, your in that moment. Okay, your attitudes, your actions, and over time, your worldview. That's why a nation can be deceived with the right media attention.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Right. That's how a nation can go into fear or go into faith or go into blessing in a very quick fashion. All right. Got to be super careful with what goes in your eyes and your ears. I personally have learned that one of the things that I have to do is I have to be very intentionally focused on choosing the influence I listen to. Mm-hmm. Influencers, the news I watch, if I watch news, because I don't particularly care for much of any of it. Podcasts, music, most of my music. I like beats. I like rap. I like R&B. I like rock. I like country. I like all of it. Well, I got to make sure that I take the time to be careful with what I listen to. So I listen to stuff that's inspirational or upbeat. All right. So out of curiosity, what was a quick review of what you heard me say?
Yeah, so I'd say that we have the 5 different types of influences, right? Mm-hmm. So you have, to begin with, you have your parental influences, mm-hmm. which is basically your parental figures, whether they were your real parents or whether they were just a parental role in your mm-hmm. life. Maybe you were raised by a grandmother. That would serve as a parental motherly figure. Then you have your environmental influences. So if you grew up in Bronx, mm-hmm. or in the Bronx,
you're probably going to have an interesting accent.
Yeah, or you'll have a very different accent than if you were born in Boston and raised in Boston or Florida mm-hmm. or California or anywhere else. You'll also have different things that you value. You'll also have different certain ways that you respond to things and tendencies. So your first two core upbringing based influences are your parental influences and your environmental. Then going into kind of spanning more of your life,
I would say more developmental.
Right, is your relational influences and then your situational influences. So the relational one's really a big one because that is where we get you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. We actually like to say that you are the average of your 5 influences as well, because there are these 5 different core parts. Right. And when people are talking about you're the average of your 5 closest friends, they're missing out on these other influences, which are also very important. So if all you do is read books and you don't have a lot of friends, then those books are probably one of your biggest influences. So moving on from relational, then number 4 is situational influences, which is kind of any major event that's going on, or it could be a contextual small event. So like would the guy in the gym was a subliminal example, so I guess that's not situational at all, but could it be situational if like your current like when you go to the gym, you're in gym mode? Does that count as situational at all?
Could be, yeah.
Okay, cool. So situational is like your actual situation that you're in. That's going to be an influence that dictates the way that you react, whether you react in an angry form or a positive and
absolutely
upbringing. So then the final one is subliminal, which did you say that was the most powerful?
It's the most powerful in as an adult.
Okay, I see.
A lot of the other ones say kind of like almost like there's a reason why they found the parental and the environmental are kind of under the ground when you look at our graphic on YouTube. When you see me do this on YouTube with the whiteboard lesson, it's because a lot of times those don't come to the surface, right? When you're trying to remember, I told you what does it change the essence of a man. I had to start from my fruit, which is the subliminal, meaning this is the area that I can see right now, and go backwards all the way through to figure out what I needed to keep and what I needed to let go of. Okay? Subliminal influences can be so powerful right now as an adult, a young adult, a teenager, maybe a developing teenager, because that will actually be the fruit that everybody else gets to see from your life.
Well, and
it's how people will judge you.
I have a decent example for subliminal really quickly. So we talked about it could be music, it could be TV shows, it could be movies, it could also be, I assume, podcasts and YouTube videos. So this right now, what you're listening to is a subliminal influence.
Could be, yeah. Absolutely.
I listen to every business influencer you can think of. I've watched thousands, if not tens of thousands of hours of content and listened to every podcast and everything. So if I end up being a super successful business person, probably those influences played a part because basically all I have let come in and out of my ears for the last 8 years has been stuff like that, personal development, business, stuff like that. I think it's really powerful because I noticed that I listened to a few podcasts by some well-known people in the industry. The MF CEO Project's a big one I like. He cusses a lot, so if you don't like that, then it's not going to be for you. It is for me. I love him. It's Andy Frisella's podcast of First Form.
It's also why I tell him all the time, be very cautious of what you watch and listen to.
Right, yeah, he curses a lot, but he's actually my favorite, besides you, he's my favorite entrepreneur
It's like polar opposites.
I know. Well, dude, just because he cusses a lot doesn't mean that he doesn't have a lot of good things to say, but my top 3 are probably him, Gary Vee, and Tom Bilyeu. So you guys made the list. Congrats.
Man, I'm number 4.
No. You're ahead of them. You automatically are ahead of them. Don't even. Those are my top 3 outside of you. So
case in point, I want to make sure that people understand. This is where your likes, what you like, has to come into contact and balance with what you need.
Right.
Okay. You may like very derogatory music and very derogatory things. You maybe gravitate towards it. Okay. That tells me that unfortunately you're probably dealing with some wounds and some other things, because historically people that are gravitate towards that stuff are typically, for lack of a better word, have a bit more stuck and lost in them. Does that make sense?
So maybe if you listen to more emo type of music, you are probably
exactly. So if you're watching a lot of derogatory stuff, listen to derogatory stuff, you are going to benefit the most from removing that and replacing it with something that's more positive and upbeat. And you can find stuff nowadays with the same kind of beats, the same kind of grungy guitars and all kinds of stuff.
And look, I'm glad you said it that way. Like, you will benefit from this, because I can hear the person saying, "Well, I love thrasher music. Like, I don't want to give that up," and that's fair. You're happy, you're willing to do that.
It's true.
We just want you to be cognizant that that thrasher music you're listening to, or the emo, grunge, or whatever you're listening to, it's probably having more of an impact on your thoughts and your emotional state than you think.
Higher relatability for nightmares and all kinds of things.
Right. So just be very careful and see if like if you keep listening to that stuff, that's totally fine. Like I said, I'm going to keep listening to the influencers who cuss. I'm probably going to cuss a little bit. Not on this show, but
because you'll get evicted.
Yeah, because I'll get evicted for sure. But that's the risk that I play. But I know that by listening to those influencers, that's a risk that is posed, and that's valuable insight.
Well, and you need to kind of think of the absolute worst possible mistake that you can make, and this is something I've actually gone over with my kids time and time again, is thinking these influences have no impact on you.
For sure. Well,
it's the worst possible thing because they all do.
I wish I could remember who said this quote. I want to say it was Tony Robbins, but because I can't quote it exactly, I don't want to
It's the benefit of watching too many influencers.
But that's true. So anyway, so here's the thing. I think it was Tony, but somebody said something along the lines of you have to stand guard at the entryway to your mind or something like that. Okay. I think it was Robbins, might not have been, but basically they said you need to stand guard as if there are enemy combatants trying to get in.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the thing. So we want you to take this seriously because
Connor's like, you're okay. You come on in.
Yeah.
Come on into the club.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, it's fine. You're good. I'm just friendly, man. I like to.
It's not. Yeah, I mean, like I said, you got to focus on what you need more than what you're accustomed to. And the reason you do that is if you're gonna go from stuck to unstoppable, if you're gonna actually get traction, you are going to have to change the way you do things.
Right. And you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with
AKA
or study
influences.
the most.
Yeah.
And because of that, you're the average of your top 5 influences. Keep in mind, if you're the average and you're studying people who are not where you want to be, that's the key, really, is you want to be listening to people who you would be okay with being like. If that's not the case, be very careful.
And you'll find that that some of that will shift as you grow and mature.
Yeah.
You know,
I might get to a point where I no longer can tolerate the cussing. I like it now, but I don't care.
Well, it's also because we've been desensitized to it because of the other media sources.
That's true.
Now it's shock value. I mean, now there's book titles.
For
and all
me,
kinds.
it's like funny. It's like I don't, and plus it's just words, so I'm just like, but
words have value.
Yes, for sure.
Words can derail somebody's entire thing. When a parent comes to you and says you're worthless and you suck.
Well, no, that's.
All right, so that's what I'm getting at is influences are more powerful than we give them credit for.
Absolutely.
Which is why they need to have more focus and more attention. Influencers are so powerful that most people will at least marry the embodiment of at least one of their parents.
Or an anti-parent.
Yeah.
That's definitely very powerful.
I can tell you that my first marriage, because I've been married now twice, and I'm very happily married now with Karen. My first marriage, unfortunately, I ended up marrying one of what came across of, I don't want to condemn this, my first wife, because at all, because I'm sure I could have been a better husband too, but we had deliberate, direct challenges in our marriage because I married some of the things that my parents could have improved upon. Like she was the illustration and embodiment of some of those characteristics.
Which were not so great.
Yeah, which are not so great. And I'm not going to shame anybody. She's on her journey.
Oh, of course.
And whatnot. I can tell you that when I married Karen, because I learned kind of about influences, I was more cognizant about who I married and why. Again, so these, and because
it's like
of
a pretty
that,
big decision, dude. You probably should have been careful the first time.
you would think most of us do, but most of us are like more focused on what someone does for a living or what someone looks like than the actual character of the person.
And that's a shame because those are purely superficial things.
Which is why you have more broken homes than not, right? It's because people aren't putting enough time and energy into one, figuring out who they are, right? So they're a half a person is trying to marry another half a person expecting a whole marriage, which is
imagine
stupid.
If we spent less time trying to find somebody who basically gives us what we think we want, and instead we looked for somebody who actually is what we want.
Well, the reality is too, when you marry somebody based on character traits and values and stuff like that, when those are a bulk part of who you're marrying, then when life throws a curveball at you, right? So there's no willingness to kind of stray or whatever. So for example, Karen's beautiful, okay? Shortly after we got married, she began having health struggles, right? And it's taken a toll on her body and her mobility. And I'm sure part of her, she expressed at one time, part of her thought that I was going to cut and run because she wasn't, quote unquote, the woman that I married. Not realizing that
from a superficial physical standpoint.
From a superficial standpoint, not realizing she is the woman that I married.
Yeah.
Right. And when she continues, she's been doing this now, but when she continues to uncover that I'm not going anywhere, there's a foundation there that can be beautiful. Because let's face it, at 70, 80 years old, I'm sorry, it's not going to be about
nobody's going to be really attracted. I mean, maybe John Stamos, maybe you can get away with it, bro. You and Rob Lowe.
He's not that old, is he?
They're like 50. Have you seen how they look at 50?
Dude, I'm close to 50. I got
but
5
for
more
me,
years.
that's like ancient. But yeah, I'm saying.
Do you hear what he just said on air? Oh my gosh.
I'm like early 20s, guys. So just you're used to it.
I earned my wrinkles. Thank you very much.
Dude, the wrinkles are awesome. I'm just saying John Stamos has characteristically few of them for his age.
Again, like I said, your influence are so powerful that you'll historically marry or end up having a significant relationship with one of your most difficult parental figures, warts and all.
Yes.
Right? And that's just going to happen.
By the way, hey, if you're over 50, I love you. I wasn't meaning to be mean.
You heard what he said, and I heard what he said. All right. The other thing I want you to consider is when it comes down to questions is how do you think your influences shaped your life? And I mean, like, really seriously take that question seriously, right? Think about that stuff. Consider how you talk to others. Do you lean into others in conversations, or do you lean away from them? Do you listen, or do you want to speak over top of people? Do people? There goes Connor. Do people blow through your boundaries? All right. So in other words, do you allow people to just step all over your toes and boundaries, or do you have firm boundaries? Like, these are all things that are shaped during the influences part of your life, right? What you stand for and what you stand against was trained.
So all these things that you think are you
Mm-hmm.
are actually coming
elements
from influences.
Exactly.
Wow.
Right? So if you're going to understand the real you, we have lots of different tools and assessments to figure that out. You need to do so from the perspective of I genuinely want to figure out who I am, what I'm meant for, and how I go there, right? The other thing I was going to say about influences real fast before it leaves my brain again is if you sincerely want to be the best you can possibly be, then you are going to have to remove the negative influences that are around you, whether it be music, whether it be people, whether it even be parents. I will tell you, for a season, right, my parents were still in a very healing process of their own, and it was not in my best interest to be connected to them on a regular basis, right? My own father tried to talk me out of starting my first business. Now, he did so out of love, out of the information that he had at the time, right? Not knowing that my life would shape up to be differently than some of the things that he experienced, right? So people can genuinely come to you out of love and concern and still be wrong, right? They can come to you and they can speak unfortunate negativity, like you're never gonna do this, you're not focused enough, you're not working hard enough, and from their perspective, they think they're showering you with love, but really what they're showering you with is limitations.
Well, what they actually think they're doing is they think they're protecting you.
Mm-hmm. And what they're really doing is protecting themselves, protecting the figurative selves,
Protecting their ego.
Protecting the things that they haven't been able to achieve themselves. So here's what I learned. If you want to master every single area of your life, one of the first areas you got to master is your influence. Your influences have to now become chosen versus influenced.
So you need to choose to put down Game of Thrones and listen to more podcasts. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be ours. Yeah. We don't care if it's
could
yours.
Could read more books, whatever. Yeah.
But read more books. Study things by people who are where you want to be in life or who give you the information you need to become that person.
That's right.
Instead of spending your time around people who are holding you back.
Yeah. Like I said, this one piece of content had a huge impact in transforming me because it allowed me to look at people who hurt and harm me as wounded kids because they didn't know what they didn't know. So I was able to free them and let them go, let that hurt and that weirdness go and all that kind of stuff, right? Because they didn't know what they didn't know. And I was able to go in and retake the influences the negative influences they placed in my life and remove them and replace them. So that's how powerful this can be. So 4 steps to get you going. Okay. So we got to get in the show. We're running a little bit long, but Honestly assess what impact the 5 influences had on you as of and up until today. 5 influences again: parental, environmental, relational, situational, and subliminal. Okay? Honestly assess what happened and where those things came into play. All right? Number 2, ask yourself, are these influences taking me further towards my goals or further away from my goals? That will tell you if that influence needs to stay or go. Okay? The answer is no. Adjust. Step 3 is adjust. Make the switch. Have courage. Make the change. Don't wait. Every day you wait to change an influence that's having a negative impact in your life is 10 years off of you attaining your goals. Think about that. How do I know that? I lived it.
You wasted 10 years.
I wasted a decade.
Oh, man. Just because you
Decade.
didn't figure out influences.
Because I didn't figure out influences.
Wow.
A decade.
Extremely
Right?
powerful.
Step 4, add influences that can take you towards your goals and aspirations. Okay?
I love it.
All right. You heard it. Influences. Hit it hard. Hit it serious. If you want more information on this, check out the whiteboard lesson where I draw this all out, go in a little more detail on each one of the influences to help you better understand it. We love you. We're thankful for you. We're here to help you win. We believe in you, and we'll see you again on the next Journey Principles. Take care, guys.
See you guys.
I'll see you in the next video. And please, if you don't mind and you enjoyed the life mastery content we're building, consider hitting the subscribe button and also hitting the bell so you'll be the first to get notified anytime we release new content.